Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Rosa Technocrat. Today I am here with one more new topic, and that's blocking a file based on the file size or file content. So let's discuss more deep into this. The source of the video was like I had a requirement from a customer who wanted to block a file based on file size. So what was happening is like he came to me with a requirement saying if the size exceeds 10 MB, then he wants to block all the downloads. So that was the initial requirement, and we were able to configure it and achieve it. So this motivated me to also publish a video or this knowledge base onto the on our channel. So let's start how we did this. So the solution for this was FortiGate DLP protection profile. So how we did, like using DLP, we can block file based on file size as well. Okay, so I use the DLP profile to block a file based on file size. And if the user is trying to download a file that is bigger than XYZ size, we can block it using DLP protection profile. So the purpose of DLP protection profile is not only about blocking based on file size, but it has so many other purpose like data leak prevention. So we will be discussing this. Let's go. Okay. So what we will be discussing is like introduction to DLP, FortiGate DLP overview, key features of FortiGate DLP, how FortiGate DLP works, use cases and benefits of FortiGate DLP. And as you know, our channel is for the labs, always showing you everything in practical. So we will be doing a practical all around these topics. Okay. So first is what is DLP? So DLP it is a like a strategy or a method to prevent unauthorized access, sharing or leakage of sensitive data. So basically to stop DLP, I mean to stop the data loss, we use the data loss prevention technique. So DLP is data loss prevention, and there are different DLP solutions available, whereas FortiGate DLP profile is just a part of it, and it's not like a complete DLP solution. Like there are uh, proper only DLP solutions available in the market as well. But on FortiGate, similar to like web filtering profile, URL filtering profile, antivirus profile, anti-spam profile, similar to this, FortiGate also got DLP profile or data loss prevention profile. What are the uses of DLP? So basically protects into intellectual property, customer data, and compliance with regulations. So how you can achieve this? Like the compliance, that is because you will be able to uh, block the data based on the regulatory requirement. And then common data loss vectors are email, cloud storage, USB devices, network traffic. So how FortiGate will help us in this case is in network traffic. So on network traffic, you can use DLP profile to block content based on sensitivity or the type of content. Maybe if you are in India, you want to block all Aadhaar numbers, or you may want to block SSN in US, or any PII informational personal identifiable information, credit card numbers, all those things you want to block in attachments, files, or any kind of data. So you can define a pattern for the kind of data that you want to log, block, monitor, what you can do. So that's the purpose of data loss prevention. So key features of FortiGate DLP, what FortiGate can do specifically is it can scan files and emails for sensitive data patterns, as I told in my previous slide, and example credit card numbers, SSN, and any format, or maybe it's a Aadhaar in India, Aadhaar number formats, okay, or you can define any pattern as well. So you can have your manual pattern defined, and based on that pattern, you can block it. Okay. Policy-based control, of course, because you are going to use firewall policy to control this DLP. So based on a specific firewall policy and then binding the DLP will help in this case. So policy-based control. It defines rules to block, quarantine, or log sensitive data transfer. So what actions you can take? You can take block, quarantine, or log. Okay. So these are the different actions that you can take. We will discuss in the next page as well. And the real-time monitoring. Of course, you can generate logs for this, and it will also help you to achieve the compliance support depending on various regulatory compliance like GDPR, PCI, DSS, or maybe HIPAA if you want to hide all the patient's information depending on a pattern that you define. So you may mention HIPAA. So all these. So depending on the compliance, what you want to block or pattern that can be achieved using the DLP. Now it's coming specifically to FortiGate. So on FortiGate, what you have to do is you need a DLP dictionary, DLP sensor, and DLP profile. So and a firewall policy. These are all the different components that you configure or bind together in FortiGate to make DLP work. So these are the different configuration that you need. Okay, DLP dictionary, sensor, profile, and firewall policy. So DLP configuration is for these components. Okay. Once you understand the component, it's easier to configure them. What are the steps or how to configure the DLP on FortiGate? So first is enable data leak prevention in features. It's not prevention, sorry. It's not leak, it's data loss. My mistake. Data loss prevention in the feature. Then second is you have to create a DLP profile, bind the DLP sensor and dictionary for profile, and finally bind the DLP profile in the firewall policy. So these are basically the four steps that you need to configure on the FortiGate to have the DLP enabled on the firewall policy. But please check or like make sure you are using a DLP deep SSL inspection. So DLP requires deep SSL inspection to be enabled. So you should have a CA certificate which is uh, trusted by all your clients accessing the network. So make sure you are using deep SSL inspection because it needs to uh, proxy all the files or it needs to break all the connections and do a deep SSL inspection on the data to go through the content in the files and depending on the pattern that you want to block. And yeah, so based on all these, if you want to block using DLP, then you require deep SSL inspection to be enabled. Okay, so the first was enable data loss prevention in features. So how you can do if you go under system and feature visibility. Under feature visibility, you have this data leak prevention. So you have to enable this checkbox. By default, it's disabled. So you have to enable it. So once this is enabled, you will be able to see data leak prevention under security profiles. Okay. Data leak prevention under security profile. So this option will only be visible after enabling this under the system features. Okay. Once this is visible, you have to create a profile. For example, I am saying profile to block 1 MB file or 10 MB file, any size. Okay. So this profile is specifically what I am creating here is just for a file size because my requirement based on the video source was blocking any data file being downloaded greater than 10 MB, 1 MB based on the specific size. So this my profile is based on file size. So once this DLP profile is created, you have to bind the sensors to the profile and dictionary to the sensor. So dictionary will be binded to the sensor, sensor will be binded to the DLP profile, and DLP profile will be binded to the policy, firewall policy. This is how the flow works. Okay. Uh, so we checked how to enable data leak prevention, then create DLP profile, bind DLP sensors and dictionary for profile, and this requires deep SSL inspection. So once you do all this, you will be able to block the content or the file using DLP profile. Yeah, one more important thing is the pattern. Like I said, pattern, right? So many customers or many of you might have a requirement to block the files based on file name, right? So even based on a file name, you can block. So you can block based on file name, based on file type, based on file size, based on the content in the file. So all this can be achieved using the DLP profile. So this was something new to me as well, because most of us or most of the people are not using the data leak prevention on the FortiGate. So everyone mostly uses antivirus, web filter, or application control or intrusion prevention. But data leak prevention is very, means it's very few people use it. So if you want to block a file using a file name, file size, file type, content, anything inside the file, you can use data leak prevention for this. Okay, now this is specifically with respect to blocking file using file size. I'm sorry, my typo is here, blocking. So if you want to only filter based on size, then you have to do it under the CLI. So how we do it? The same configuration from the CLI is configure DLP profile. First, edit the DLP profile. Okay, double click just. And the rule number one is there you have to add this set file size 10,000. This size is in KBs basically. Okay. So if you mention 10,000, that becomes 10 MB. Okay. So to block a file just based on the file size, you have to use this CLI command under the rule. And this option is not visible on the GUI. This is not in GUI. So that's why I'm specifically highlighting it here. Not in GUI. This is not available in GUI. Okay. So if you are blocking file using file size, you have to use this command set file size. Then you can also see set file type 1. So this file type 1 defines the type of pattern that needs to be blocked. As this is in the CLI, before this config DLP profile, there is one more command or like profile which is called config DLP. Okay, config DLP file pattern. So under this config DLP file pattern, we have the file types defined. On the GUI, we will be able to see, of course. Let me show you. Okay. Now, so once you do this, profile sensors are defined. This is how we create the profile or the rule. So rule I mentioned was file type is 1. So that file type is built-in patterns. This is a file type 1. So built-in patterns contains all the file types that needs to be checked and blocked. Then you have to select the protocol on which protocols this DLP profile will monitor. So it will monitor both HTTP post and GET request. That means you can neither upload nor download. Apart from these HTTP GET and POST, you can select any others protocol as well, SSH, CIFS, FTP. So all protocols are available. But for HTTP, you need to use these like for browsing, for a browsing content, HTTP GET and POST is required. Okay. Then what are the different actions or that can be taken based on this is allow, log, block, quarantine. So as you can see here, the actions allow, log, block, and quarantine IP address. Okay. So these are the different options available under the DLP profile. And but the file size that I mentioned specifically is not available in the GUI. So size is only in CLI. That's one thing. Okay. Now, once you define this DLP profile, you have to use the sensors and DLP dictionary. But in case of only blocking based on the file size, you don't need any sensors because the pattern or the my condition has been already defined in the uh, file size. Because I don't want to use any other pattern, I'm only using the file size. So for file size, you don't need any sensors, no dictionary, just the CLI command of for set file size, and the size is required only in the CLI. But if you want to use any other pattern, then you have to go and create the DLP sensors and dictionary here. These two things are required when you want to define a specific pattern. Okay, so I think that was enough for our discussion and how we can achieve it. Let's go quickly to our lab. Hey, lab time. Okay, so here is our lab. This is my firewall. So what is the first step is I'm running version 7 to 10. So what is the first step is you have to go under system, feature visibility, and you have to enable this data leak prevention. So you can see here disable enable. So by default this is disabled. Okay, so you have to enable this data leak prevention, click apply. Once you do this, you will get this data leak prevention option and you have to say create new. So create new, and then let's say I will create one new profile to block 10 MB file. Just uh, in our case, I'm only blocking based on file size. Then I have to do is I have to give a rule number. Let's say block file is my rule, block file 10 MB, or simple block 10 MB rule. Okay. I have to select HTTP GET, HTTP POST, and file type is built-in patterns. What this built-in pattern contains is you can click on edit and see. These are like BAT, COM, DLL, doc, all these file types, any of these file types, and if the file size is bigger than 10 MB, it will block. Okay, so you have to select file type and the protocols, and action is block. Okay, this why I wanted to show in the lab is this. So when you are only doing based on the file size, you don't need a sensor. But in the GUI configuration, the sensor is mandatory. This field is required. And also, it doesn't give an option to specify the file size. That is why it was complex in my case, because we were not able to see the option in GUI. It was not allowing to bypass the sensor also. So it took a little time for me to understand the thing and then block. So if you bind the DLP sensor, so under the DLP sensor, you can create policies or dictionary. Okay. So dictionary is something like this where you mention what are your patterns. So here everything is pattern based under the dictionary. So when I say you can use patterns to define what you want to block. So like Aadhaar number, SSN number. So these are something like uh, creating a pattern. What kind of pattern you want? If you there are some predefined patterns also. Is it a credit card number? Is it a or you SSN number in US? And then you can use your own regex to define the pattern. So you know, like once the regex is available, you can define any pattern uh, mm, that to be blocked. Okay, so the dictionary defines the pattern. So you have to create this dictionary. For example, I just created a dictionary DLP dictionary exe. So what it says, any file where it contains .exe file built-in pattern, I can block it. This is one of the example. Similarly, you can create any pattern and that pattern will be defined in DLP dictionary. This DLP dictionary will be binded to the DLP sensor and then sensor can be bind to the DLP profile. Okay. In my case, I'm not going to just do that for now. So I was explaining this field is required. So, but the file size option is not available and I don't want the sensor to be applied. You have to go to CLI, config DLP profile. So there is already a one created. So instead of creating it from the GUI, I will create this from CLI. Con edit uh, profile to block 10 MB. Okay, this I created a new entry. Now I will do set feature set uh, proxy, set feature set proxy config rule edit one. This is my first rule. Name I will give block 10 MB rule. Sorry, config rule edit one set name block 10 MB rule. This is my name of the rule, and then set protocol. What are the protocol I want to see? HTTP, HTTP get and HTTP post. Okay, set file type, file size. Yeah, that is important. File size. So I will define the file size as 10 MB. That means 10,000. And the set action is block. Okay, set action is block. Set file type is one. One means the built-in patterns. And then I have to do next. Okay, so in the CLI, it's not mandatory. See, it's not asking the sensor. So that's the problem between GUI and CLI here. It feels to me. Maybe we can give a feedback, or I will try if there is any version where this is not a requirement. But in version 7 to 10, it asks for DLP sensor to be applied in GUI to be mandatory, but in CLI it doesn't. Okay, so I just created the rule and then next and okay, next. So my profile is ready. Now I will just do a refresh in the GUI. Okay, you will see the profile to block 10 MB is here created. Block 10 MB rule, HTTP post, everything is there except the sensor. But now if I click OK, it will say here it's not, it's required. So from the CLI, this is okay. So just I will cancel this. Okay. So once you create this profile, you have to go to file, firewall policy, and I have this firewall policy for my outgoing traffic. Under this firewall policy, you choose the source, destination, everything, and you have to bind this DLP profile. DLP profile here, select block 10 MB, for example, profile to block 10 MB, the just now we created, and the SSL inspection has to be deep inspection enabled. Click OK, and then of course OK. Okay, so this is done. Okay, now let's go to our VM where we have to test it. Okay, this is my Windows VM that is connected to the same firewall. I'm just opening a browser. Come on, man. I'm sorry, this my VM is little slow. Okay, give me a second, or let me try full screen. Yeah, that's better than the. Okay, now I will just go to google.com. I will say download test file size, and let's say I will go to download test files. Under test files, I will take some file to block, for example, bigger than 10 MB. Sorry, it's okay. I will download a file 200 MB and let's say on port 80. As soon as I click on this, what it should give? It should give the file 200 MB.zip has been blocked. The file is larger than the configured file size limit. Okay, so this is how you can block just based on the file size. Similarly, using DLP, you can also block based on file name, file size, file content, anything that is available inside a file. But you have to use the uh, regex and pattern matching for this. And for file size, it was just simple. Okay. Hope this will help you, and you if you face any similar requirement in future, or if you get such requirement, that will help you to block the file using any of these requirements. Okay, so let's go back to our PPT. Of course, there is nothing more on the PPT. So CLI is done, actions are done, lab time done. And guys, thank you for your attention. Let's secure a database with FortiGate DLP. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching Rosa Technocrat.